this point now, I've exhausted my personal network. I've hit everyone in that contact list, everyone on LinkedIn. And so I was like, okay, well, if we're going to do it, it's just going to be really hard. And we're going to go do it like adults do. We're going to go talk to strangers, family offices. We're going to have to go raise money, and actually get some work this time.
It's such a fun period. All the permutations of what it could be and what it will be and what it can be and what you have to do. And
my take on this is like the ship is always being built. Anytime I get to like 10,000 users or whatever, it's like, okay, 100,000. And maybe that's like the sort of like greedy like founder. And
the biggest problem with it was like too obvious. Like, well, why isn't this there? Like, yes, this is a big problem.
Oh my goodness. Let's see what it is. Happy Monday.
Yeah, happy Monday. Oh man. Yeah, like this week and next week, and then everyone's trying to cram in all the meetings.
Oh, look at this. The gang's all here.
Hey guys.
How you doing?
Good.
Good. Well, your audio sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, when in Rome, joining a podcast, got to break out the podcast mug.
This brought to you by agree.com.
That's all right. It's great. How are you doing, Kyle?
Good. Well, awesome. Well, thanks to you both for joining. I feel like it's been a journey since we first met, and it was just after the billboard, right? In San Francisco at the tech event. And from then until now is a lifetime.
It feels like that for us.
No, that's what I mean. In agree terms, it's unbelievable.
We were celebrating breaking our 1,000th user. Now we're on the cusp of 10,000, probably by Wednesday, which would be wild.
Amazing. That's so great. Like, I can't wait to hear all the details, and thanks for taking the time. I love it. And we're actually in such a specific period for you all. Marty, you were talking about raising your seed round. Like, this point of where you're at, sort of coming out of, in that early angel pre-seed, looking at seed, looking at 10,000 users, and soon enough you'll be looking at 100,000 users. Like, what I want to do is I really want to dig into the early period and talk about like the idea, the inception, and the first buying the domain name, which I've seen, Marty, your stories about, but like, I want to hear the early stories. So I thought maybe we would start with like, first, how long have you all worked together, and where did this start from a collaboration perspective?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, the backstory here is, so Marty and I put together a venture capital fund called Adventure Fund. And so, writing like early stage, like 100K to 500K checks in really early stage companies. So think like pre-seed, seed, sometimes we'll do a series A, but we're a drop in the bucket at that point. And initially, Agree started as outbound fund thesis. So we were trying to find two founders who were building this and give them money, more or less. And so the idea is that like at the end of the most important agreements, somebody has to pay somebody else. But historically, the process of signing the thing and the process of paying the thing are completely separated from one another. And so that seems silly. And so every company that we talk to in the space, just hyper fixated on charging for e-signature. And so in 2024, there's DocuSign, there's a billion DocuSign alternatives. They're all competing on price, right? And so our take is like, it's a race to the bottom, and it's kind of a commodity feature. And so we think the smarter move is just like give e-signature away for free, and use it as a wedge into becoming like a B2B payments company. And so couldn't find anyone building it. And so like classic founder, like see a problem, solve a problem, decided to put our founder hats back on and started the company earlier this year.
That's so great. Now, I want to double click on that moment, but before we do that, like, I guess what is both of y'all's, I guess starting with Marty, like, what's your background pre-Adventure Fund?
Yeah, so we're both founders, and we're both fortunate enough to have a few exits under our belt. So I had started a company, like 18 years ago now, but it was acquired by Twitter. We did that acquisition in 2012, so it's still pretty early days at Twitter, pre-IPO, pre-Elon, but back when it was still called Twitter. 140 characters, no images, no photos. It was a different beast. but started comp sci undergrad, fell in love with design, was always the sort of back then that was the unicorn, the person that could design and code. And then from there, had a few other startups, one that sold to Eventbrite, one that sold to Brex, which is a little more connected to what we do at Agree now. But then, Will, you had two exits too.
Yeah, also sort of repeat founder, had been in the entrepreneurship world for some time now, had a couple exits, and then yeah, just sort of in the immediate time leading up to Agree, sort of had been sort of on the venture capital side of the table. And so yeah, we both had kind of been in this world and sort of seen this problem, and like lived it a bunch of times. I've done revenue through contracts where it's like, hey, after the thing is signed, then I have to go figure out how to invoice against it and hope my customer pays me on time. And the reality, like, nobody actually ever pays on time, and so I have to be the bad guy and follow up. Or even like on adventure fund side of things, like when we write a check into a company, there's an investment doc that we sign. But after like we sign that investment doc, like we kind of have to ask the founders separately, being like, hey, can you send the wire information? And that PDF in an email with like plain text of their account and routing numbers. And so it's like the least secure way that you could send something, but it's like state of the art today. And so that just having lived this just kind of like blew our minds.
Totally. Now, no, so before, like, coming from past exits, where was the inflection point for Adventure Fund? When did you all just, like, collide and then figure out setting up Adventure Fund?
So this would have been like right around right before COVID started. We were just, I had a number of folks who were founders who had exits. We're on a group chat, and we got to the point where whenever somebody said, "Hey, I'm in on a deal," everybody else just like, "Okay, I'm in." We started going in just because the other person was in, and so I was like, "Hey, we should formalize this. We should maybe pool our money together, do something a little bit." I don't know what you'd call it, an investment club or what. And they just said, "Hey, Marty, if you do all the work, we're in." It's
And so Marty, look at the Bill, if you do all the work, like we might have a fund here.
But it was pretty cool because once we like Googled how to start a fund, it's like, okay, use Carta and they'll do most of the work for us. I mean, we didn't know a lot. I mean, I was an LP in a bunch of other funds, but I never started a fund. I didn't really know about any of the compliance or regulatory side. I didn't know about any of the filings we had to do, just the process. So we learned quick. And, being founders were quick studies. But in the first 9 days, when I'm just going through text and say, "Hey, this is happening. Who's in?" It was $1 million is in. And, for funds, that's not a lot of money. But then, it was in 30 days that we had $3 billion. It's like, "Oh, okay, that's so like, product market fit, right?" It's like, "Okay, there's something here." Um, and then, yeah, so that's why we said, "Hey, let's go do this. Let's make a fund. It'll be fun." And, all things considered, it's a small fund compared to, it's a small emerging fund. So $10 million fund, but it's not big enough even on the management fee to like pay our bills or do our lifestyle. It's something we kind of do on the side while we're doing other stuff. But we go all into that, get really excited. And then, we had done fund one, fund two, and then we were thinking about fund three. And at this point now, I've exhausted my personal network. I've hit everyone in that contact list, everyone on LinkedIn. And so I was like, okay, well, if we're gonna do it, I think we can do it. It's just gonna be really hard. And we're gonna go like do it like adults do. We're gonna have to go talk to strangers, family offices. We're gonna have to go raise money, like, and actually get some work this time. So we're fortunate that, it was so easy before. Like, we're like, well, if we're gonna do that, right? If fundraising is a grind and it's grueling and it's painful and it's full of rejection, why don't we go do the fun version of that? And, do it for a startup. Or, Will and I are founders. So there's always a list somewhere, Notepad, Google, of like ideas, things that need to exist, right? And for us, we were using it as fun thesis, but there were like one or two that we could stop talking about. Came up in every conversation. And so Agree was the one who said, "Hey, let's go, put together a prototype. Let's make a deck. Let's surface it around. Let's just see what the appetite's like for this particular problem. Let's talk to some potential customers, users." And everyone was just like, loved it, loved it, loved it. And then the investor market there was so high. There wasn't anyone we talked to that was like, yeah, this should exist. The biggest problem with it was like too obvious. Like, well, why, why isn't this there? Like, yes, this is a big problem.
I love that. What was that period between, like, the sort of brainworm, the earworm of the idea that couldn't go away, to a few conversations, a few things, and then like, no, we're actually, this is we're gonna shift focus to this, as a primary.
Yeah, so since Will and I are founders, and this is, why Will and I work well together because our brainstorming is very similar. Where to really get our heads around something, let's just say an investment thesis, we want to bring something to light. We don't just believe in like the idea, you go and pontificate that something should exist or you should converge two things or like, hey, this would be a really great idea. Like we really want to understand like how you'd bring it to market, how you'd price it, who the customer, the ICP would be, like all of the questions the founder should ask. So usually what Will and I will do is go through a lot of the steps you would normally go through, whether that's thinking about a prototype, writing a PRD, whether that's standing up a marketing landing page and right, like or even making a deck that for something you're never going to fundraise for because the constraints in those things, right? Like a marketing landing page, you have one page, you've got like a big headline, subtext, you got like three core features. Like,
Yeah.
what are those? Like, what are
Yeah,
the
what
three
are
core
those?
features? It can't be everything. If you want to do a pitch deck, how would you monetize? What's the TAM? What's the market? Who are you selling into? Who are the competitors? Like, I want to go through that whole process. So Will and I did this, and Will, you have the actual timestamp because Will actually stood up a page that embarrassing is still up there. I think we'll just leave it up for historical purposes. But I mean, was it like, is it 2021?
Yeah, it's like late 2020, early 2021, I think. So like, and I think best when I'm like creating a website, like Marty said. So I'm like just like creating this website, like hacking
Four
away, like,
sections, you've got your
Yeah.
like, and if you have to fill it out, that's the like.
Yeah. The
exactly.
best part is it was called Agree. I mean, it was some free domain, right? Like, let's agree
Hey,
to
I hate my
execute.
$12 a year, Marty.
Yeah.
It wasn't free. But yeah, it was a variation of Agree. And so, but thankfully now we have the real domain, agree.com, which for us is just like total game changer because it's like instantly buys trust with the, like our users' customers. But not just like about our users, it's about their customers. And that for us has just been a total force multiplier.
So doing the pitch deck, doing the landing page, you're sort of working through this stuff. You start socializing a little bit, and then when did you sort of dig into the platform from a development perspective?
So, late 2020, early 2021 is when that landing page goes out, right? And this is the moment at which Will and I are like, yeah, this needs to be a thing, but we're not going to go build it. We're going to create this thesis and we're going to go find founders and we're going to go invest in them because this is what we're doing. We're running a fund. This is what we do. Um, but we want to go through this exercise because we really want to. I mean, we want to invest early, and we want to mitigate risk. We want to have really sound sort of thesis around what this problem is and how to solve it. So we go deep, but it's not until um, late 2023, like about this time. So this time last year, Will and I are having the conversation about Fund Free because we were just about to deploy all the capital, or we just raised all the capital for Fund Two. So you kind of like you raise all your money, now you got to think about raising again.
Yeah.
You're in a constant cycle. So that's when we decided, hey, so I think it was almost like a year ago today. He said, let's start. We don't know yet, right? Like we're in indecision period. We might well raise a fund. We might launch this new product. Let's go forward with both. And so let's start hacking away on a prototype. Let's think about what it might look like. What first lines of code be like? And then let's make that deck. Let's make it like actually polished. And I want to throw it in front of a few investor friends just to like get their feedback. And then it's January, and I think like late January. So we're talking like a month period has gone by after the holidays. And an investor here in New York reached out to me and said, "Hey, I just wanted to meet you. Saw you were in the community. Just want to get coffee with you." I was like, "Hey, I'm down to meet people." And I'm thinking, "Hey, maybe LP for the fund, right?" Like, yeah, this guy's he's got his own fund. Maybe he wants to invest in another fund. But we're there. We're shooting the shit, right? And on the calendar, we got like 45 minutes booked. And so I'm down to 40 minutes. There's 5 minutes left, and like we're ready to wind it up and shake hands and move on to our next meetings. But I was like, "Hey, Simon, um, I got this crazy thing that I've been working on. You want to hear about it?" And Simon says, "Hey, I like crazy. Let's hear about it." So I got my like 5-6 minute window where I'm going to go pitch him on Agree real quick. Just but my ask was, I'm not asking for a check here. I'm not fundraising. There's not even a company. I just want him to talk me off a ledge. I want to be like, no, this is a dumb idea. This is a waste of your time. And for all the investor reasons, right? Tell me what an investor would say to be like, do not pursue this. But at the end of that, he basically says, "I'm in." And I was like, "I don't know what that what does that mean? I'm in." And he's like, "Yeah, I want to invest in this." I was like, "Oh shit!" Like timeout. It doesn't even like he can't as it called Will out.
Or the life changes in your mind as you're sitting there.
Yeah, well, because then, it's like, theoretically, like, how much? It's like, "Oh, wow, that would if we raised, like, 1.5 million, $2 million, that'd be, like, near 10% of the round. We'd have good traction already. Now we have 1 coffee. Now, like, 6 minutes in."
Yeah.
Side note,
So
I'm getting engaged this weekend, by the way, and so, like, I'm like
Nice.
I'm, like, super nervous, like, about to propose or whatever, like, at a fancy hotel.
Life change. Like, wait a second. Now I gotta figure out all the
Marty's like, "By the way, Will, just got our first check. It's go time." And I'm like, "Oh my god, like, give me 2 days, Marty, just 2
yeah.
days." So,
Oh my
For
gosh.
any of the founders in the audience, you want to file this form called an 83B. This is very important for tax purposes. But what you can't do is you can't talk valuation, you can't raise money, you can't do any of that before you do this. So there's this very like, oh, cool. It's cool that like things are above like timeout, pause. Nobody say anything. Nobody send any emails. Like we can't have records here of anything. Like nothing's happening.
It's worth
Not
nothing.
yeah, we are not
Nobody owns
fundraising.
anything.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, like Simon, it's great you wanted into nothing. Nothing exists. But no, but then we need to move quick, right? We got to go because I was like, okay, hey, that was enough. I think founders, the craziest ones, you go right up to that ledge. You need someone to kind of push you, and Simon was that push where we're like, okay, no more debating. And I think Will and I had already made up our decision, but like we hadn't stacked hands and said, hey, yes, we're doing it. Now it's just like, yeah, no more looking back from this point forward. We're all in. Let's go. We are not going to raise the fund 3. We're going to go all in on agree. We polished the deck. We incorporated the business, and then 3 weeks later, we had $3 million, which was wild.
Oh my gosh, that is wild. And so good. I just imagine that 3 weeks. I mean, that's such a fun period. All the things, all the permutations of what it could be and what it will be and what it can be and what you have to do and just all of those things sort of pinballing around. That's such a fun period then.
Oh yeah, and then for any of the first time founders listening, Will and I had some exits in the past. So we're coming from a point of privilege as experienced founders to be able to raise quicker, a little bit. Well, that's a big pre-seed and it's fast, but will not lie. In the first week, it's like, shit, we might only have the 1 check. I don't think anyone's going to want to invest in this because everyone took because we had immersed ourselves in the venture world. We got a lot of calls quickly too. So that's how we were, because we had friends now, right? They were colleagues in the industry. Uh, so we got on meetings quickly, but,
Way less
yeah,
convincing.
yeah, but not everyone's in 6 minutes, like, "I'm in and here's a check." But yeah, so but also, it sounds a little trying to be like, "Hey, in a week it was grueling." But no, I didn't want to imply like everyone's just like instantly in. But yes, after that first week, like, oh, we start to build momentum. Now we got like half the round in week 2, and then yeah, by week 3, it's like, okay, now it's oversubscribed because we did only want to raise 2 at first, and then we went to 3.
Right. Now, how fast once you got that, and then you filed the form, and then you started the money pieces, and then, when did you bring on sort of first contractor team members? When did you sort of start digging in?
Yeah, I reached out to my old gang, people I'd worked with in the past. Again, a little bit, it's like this time it's 80% sniff test. Tell me this is dumb. Tell me how you would build it, how you'd look at it. And then 20% like, hey, do you want to come in? And one of the guys that I'd worked with for a really long time, I was 15 years in now, Evan Dudla, he worked for me at the first company we sold to Twitter. When we leave, him and I become co-founders with another guy, Mike and Brandon, at a company that we had sold to Eventbrite. And then years later, he and Mike go off and start their own company. They let me invest, and they ended up getting acquired by Brex. But I'd been playing a little bit of Carpool, and so Brex had asked me to join as a part of that acquisition. And that's how I ended up at Brex doing expense management bill pay. So I'd known Evan as employee, as co-founder, as colleague, and then as founder that I was investor. And then this time he's like, Marty, I'm in, I'll take CTO role. Like, I want to build this thing with you guys. And for me, because Evan was still at Brex,
Yeah.
and those guys pay a lot of money. It's ridiculous. So like they want the best talent, but man, and I only mention this because like I didn't have to ask ever, but for him to be like, "Hey, I'm gonna walk away," like they love him there, like he's highly sought after, like they want to keep him, so they keep giving him raises, keep giving him stock increases, but like he wants to do that. I'm like, whoa, that's that's bigger. That's a bigger deal to me than Simon coming in after 6 minutes.
Well, and it says a lot about the person who also, like, I've known a percentage of friends and colleagues that I've worked with in the past that like being at a bigger company doesn't really matter how much the check is or if you've got bonuses or whatever it is. It's more like what am I making and the impact I'm doing. And I want to get back into like getting my hands dirty and like making stuff and things like that.
Yeah, there's only 2 people in the world, I think, like, that have talent, and it's they both wanna know, um, what are they making? I think one thinks, "What are they making salary?" And that's not an entrepreneur, that's not a startup or sort of team member, and the other is, "What are they making?" Like, salaries are relevant. It's like, "What am I building? What am I creating? What am I putting out to the world?" And to that person, that means everything.
Yeah. So once you start making, how far off are you from right now to the original vision from back when you were sort of whiteboarding and things like that? Has it stayed really true to e-signatures with transfers post signature? Like, is that
Yeah.
that
No, no, we go back to Will's old landing page, and it's like, it's still pretty good. It's almost all there. But yeah, the prototype, it did one thing and one thing only. It facilitated our own safe, so that way with the investors, I wouldn't spend 30 minutes on a pitch saying how terrible DocuSign is and then send them a DocuSign after. I couldn't do that. But and then but yeah, but then the first beta MVP that's in closed beta, that does we were adamant it had to do signatures and payments. I don't even think it did invoicing. And then when we opened up publicly in September 4th, that was signatures, invoicing, and payments. But candidly, like rudimentary payments, rudimentary invoicing. I think like at first it only does credit card processing. You can only do one line item. You can't schedule the payment. So now everything we're building, we call it the V1. This will release. I keep saying Q1, but that's like 3, 4 weeks away. But this will have more invoice flexibility, more things on the payment side, more things on the invoice side, and more things on teams and collaboration. Bringing more.
Even the early versions that I've used that I think Marty, you and I have worked through is just some of the sort of feedback like immediately you can just see it's so well, the UI UX is so good, it's just clean and straightforward. I actually, as someone who has I should probably talk to somebody. I have a problem signing up with way too many products and services. I think I have 2,800 passwords in my one pass. Like I sign up for everything and I try everything. Like I remember giving Loom like super early feedback and like, and just like I'll try everything. And I love getting in there and seeing the early things and watching them evolve. And I just like the UI UX is so great. I signed up. I've in the past. Let's see, HelloSign was eFax also switched to sort of eSign, DocuSign, Adobe, signature. Like I've been on all of them, and what happens is I've bounced for years. I bounced between all of them, trying to find that like thing where it was like I didn't have to get in. It wasn't overhead. It wasn't a thing. It was just it was clean and easy. And I still to this day, I would say probably about once a year, I've sort of bounced between has anyone else like, I go on Product Hunt, I'm like, "Has anyone else come out with a new thing?" Because it always just feels so weird and clunky. And you're right, it is obvious, but I think it's the approach that you all have taken to it on the simplicity of the UI UX, and getting it down to what will be just a very simple, clean process, is just gonna kill. Well, your numbers already show it.
Well, they tell us as founders that if you're not embarrassed of your first version, you've launched too late. And I think what's hard about that is it's hard to be embarrassed of something. It's hard to put something out into the world and then get a bunch of feedback saying, "Hey, this is broken. This is broken. This is broken." It's like I
I
know,
don't agree
no,
with that.
no,
I don't
yeah.
agree with that. Like, that's
It's
what
just
we did
hard.
there.
It's just hard. I want to be a perfectionist. I want people to love what I build, but while at the same time, I don't want to wait 2, 3 years to put out, the end all
Totally.
be all. So we do put out the first version, and it works for most of what most of us need. But of course, all my friends who are using it have all of the edge cases that I didn't want them to have. That's what they be right.
If I open it on my BlackBerry, like, it
Yeah, yeah.
crashes, like
So everyone just like, "Oh, it's cute what you're doing, Marty, but doesn't work." I was like, "Okay, fine." I mean, we even had this one founder, I just like this story because I think it's a good sharing to other founders story, but I've got a buddy of mine and we're close and I love this guy to death, but he had sold his company to a big real estate company. He sold it for like 25, $50 million. So and he was he's a tech guy, CTO guy, but he was the CEO founder, so he's technical. but he sends me this Loom where like he can't even figure out how to like upload his doc. And I'm looking at the logs. I'm like, dude, thousands of people have figured this out who I don't even know, and you can't. And I've got another person who's like, she just messaged me on Twitter randomly. It's just said, "Hey, just discovered, agree, love what you build. I've got a unit in my basement that I rent out. And I just sent out my purses." You're telling me this random woman on Twitter who has one rental figured out how to use Agree, but you who sold to a huge real estate company like can't figure out how to upload file, but that's like the pain of like being a founder.
Yeah.
I think Will and I constantly look back. I'm like, wow, I don't even know how anyone used the thing. It was so unused because it gets so much better, so much faster. And again, for founders, there's always this distinction between like two different audiences. You have an audience that can use your platform, and then you got your ICP. Our ICP, it's folks who like they move money through the platform. They're doing between 1 and 50 million in revenue. They're invoicing. For those folks, we put them through a different onboarding. We put them through a different version of the product. And so we have this long tail product, which is free to anybody. So anyone that's listening, if you got NDAs, LOIs, whatever it is, use the product totally free. It works well. It's great, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles. And then as those bells and whistles get better, we roll them into the free version. But it means that we do have two different user bases at times with two different levels of experiences. And again, as a founder, that like hurts because like, oh, I want everyone to have that world-class experience all the time.
Totally. I think it's one of those though that I totally agree with the idea. I don't like the sort of shipping. I got so much feedback from even advisors and other people saying like, "Oh, you shipped this too late. It looks too good or whatever." And I'm like, "No, I don't. What I don't want to do is spend all my time and effort sending this to people who say like it's breaking left and right, and I wouldn't come back to it, and I'll never think of it again or whatever." Like you want to do it where it was actually more fun to have people go, "This is actually further along than I think it's supposed to be." I'm like,
Yeah.
Yes." And there's something magical that happens in your mind that when that happens, and then also as you incrementally use it and see things roll out, you're sort of part of that journey. You remember like the early Looms and Slacks and things like that when you're part of those things and you just watch those things get better, you feel like you're part of that journey.
100%.
Yeah. Um,
Especially for something that where it's like the two things that we do are contracts and like invoices slash payments. So it's like it's like a legal doc and like a money thing. Like those are two things you don't want to like half-ass, right? Like
right.
you need to get something out there that's respectable.
But you still wanna make it fun for the people who also have to do this on a re on a either that have to do it like, I get a call, "Okay, great, I gotta do this," and I hop in, and I really don't wanna be clunking around with, like, some older software, back in,
That's
like,
right.
the e-sign days, or people who do it on a repetitive basis to make it good and quick and fun to use, and simple so that it doesn't become such a headache.
And that's why we really prioritize design and sort of like the user experience of using us because it's like, even little things like the blurple that we use, like the fintech blurple, it's this blue purple sort of combination. It's trust inspiring, right? And so having sort of like a really clean sort of modern UI paired with like like behind the hoods like really secure payment processing is like you gotta have both of those things. You can't just like like put something out there that's like really janky design or like, really like sort of piecemeal together payment processing. Like you need to have some polish around it.
Totally. I do think, Will, that my suggestion is take the old site, put it put it on a little Vercel somewhere and put it on the lower right-hand corner as an Easter egg with like shaking emoji. And if people find it, they have the Internet Archive version of Agree.
You, I might just do that because it is on Vercel and it is still live. So I probably should
Oh, like
like
literally a handshake emoji, and if you find it, people are gonna go like, "Wait, what is this?" And you should totally do it. Um, well, so like, okay, so you start rolling it out. Obviously, this is about the time we met, right? It was about the billboard and sort of early. I came on in that sort of beta period, giving some feedback before you started doing more sort of marketing rollout. Was that right?
Billboard, it
Sort of
was
summer.
September 4th. So, because yeah, because we launched publicly September 4th. So September 1st, the whole month of September, we ran that billboard on the 101 kind of around lunch.
Oh, I can't even believe I met you on launch day. That
Yeah, there you go.
is such a good photo, by the way, and I gotta, like, tie it to the socials. It's such a good photo of the billboard that went up. Um, that's so much fun. So from that point, you opened up publicly and you started sort of watching and getting feedback, from that point, and then you started running, advertising, social, what was the sort of what's the first 100, first 1,000 users approach?
Yeah, so for me, I've been documenting this on Twitter, like live, the first user, the first 100, the first 10,000. But I'm a big fan of like first 10. That's like your mom, your dad, your girlfriend, your significant other. Like if they're not using it, you've really built a piece of crowd.
Yeah.
But then the first 100, I firmly believe is your network. Unless you're like 16 years old, like you should have built a network because if you don't have 100 people within your close network that are going to like try or test something, again, I think there's something bigger amiss, or you're not connected enough to the industry you're trying to build for. So I think that should be your first 100. So then the real question I think strategically is like your first 1,000. And I think that's the way you should be thinking about it, right? First user should be you, build for your own pain. And then first 10 is, your mom. If your mom's not going to sign up, you got a big problem, or the equivalent of your mom. And then first 100 is your network. I hit them up, hit them hard, beg them, go knock on virtual doors on LinkedIn DMs, Twitter DMs, to get everyone excited what you're doing. And then first 1,000 for me, for Will and I, it was always like, let's go guerrilla. Let's go to where the people are at, do all sorts of unconventional stuff. We're big fans of like, be super creative. It
Coffee on the
upsets me.
corner.
Yeah, well, we do something that, like, when people see it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that was so obvious." And I'm like, what's upsetting to me is like what it is obvious, but like, why are there no other founders doing this? Like, one was coffee on the corner. So, we launched in September. There's for a variety of reasons, but there's two really big conferences in September in San Francisco, where almost the entire world of B2B SaaS sales is there. One is SaaStr, and then a week later is Dreamforce. And so we're talking about hundreds of thousands of B2B SaaS salespeople in the same like 3 block radius of one another, all within like, a 14-day period. Like, so what do? We get a coffee cart. We fully vinyl wrap it, brand it. Will and I are walking billboards and we're giving out free cold brew. And everybody, because there's so many people, it's so crowded that the Starbucks is overrun. The local news is there because like the manager of that Starbucks on Fourth, like quit on the spot and they couldn't take it. Because everyone's placing their mobile order and nobody wants to wait a half hour for a mobile order. But it's just, so we've got this line of people wanting coffee, right? But we get to go talk to everybody, tell them what Agree is. But I'm just looking around. I'm like, why are there no other startups here? Why is there nobody handing out 4x6 postcards, or even doing like, the guy that like, sells used cars with like the spiral?
It's better sign. Yeah.
Yeah, where's that dude? Like, where are these people? Like, where are these founders? And so, like, I did see something yesterday where I'm in San Francisco again with Will, and now we Waymo everywhere. Love these cars that drive ourselves, but I'm in the back of the Waymo and I'm thinking, well, who's the audience that takes Waymo? Right, a little bit higher net worth, probably tech savvy, early adopters. Yes, I have all these 4x6, 5x7 postcards on my backpack. Why am I not just leaving them in the Waymo? Like, and I'm looking around. I'm like, hey, I don't want to be the litter bug of Waymo. I'll do it nice and classy, in the little slot behind the seat. But why are there no other startups doing this? Why is no one talking about this? And then the other one I do that's super obvious, so people are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do that, is when I go to the airport. I fly a lot now. I show up extra early, so I'm there with plenty of time. But what I do is I go to all the magazine stands, and I put my little 5x7 in Harvard Business Review, MIT Tech Review, Ford, anywhere I think my audience reads, because they go and they grab that magazine, they sit in the airplane, and it's like, hey, like there it is. It's like, it's free, it's easy to do. It costs me, what, 15 cents a 5x7 to do it?
That's so good. I love that. I remember seeing the car was a disruptor, or TechCrunch seeing the big driving billboard. When I saw that going around, I felt like Will Ferrell in Elf. I'm like, I know them. I know them. Like,
Yeah, a lot of guerrilla stuff, but really it's just be as, clever and creative as possible to get in front of people and to find out what the people are. And I think that's how you get to your first 1,000 going on 10,000. But I honestly, this isn't for all startups, but if you can have any kind of viral loops, network effects, any kind of product-led growth strategies in your product, make sure those are working and those are active. Because I do think that, like, of the 10,000, let's say you get in the first 10,000, those last 1,000 to 3,000, so somewhere between 10-30%, that should be being driven from your current user base. So whether that's a referral program or something, but I think that is kind of how you know you're on your path to product market fit. Are your users telling other users or driving more traffic to your platform?
Right. That's so cool. I love it. And I love hearing about these early sort of periods. When I think about like the 0 to 1 sort of mentality, when do you feel like you've hit your one? Do you feel like you're like what is your thing when you feel like going back to the okay, we've had an idea, this has been in the back of our minds. Someone said, "Great, we'll give you some money in 6 minutes." Like, what's the next thing? Is it is it once you get to seed, once you get 10,000, 100,000 users, what do you feel like you're gonna get to that place where you sort of feel like, "Okay, we've gotten to a place where we're gonna now sort of launch into, the next step."
Yeah, my take on this is like the ship is always being built, you know? It's like anytime I get to like what are the, like 10,000 users or whatever, it's like, oh, like okay, 100,000. You know, and maybe that's like the sort of like greedy like founder in me, but I think for us it's like it's always like a pursuit of like bettering the product and like increasing the company usage. And so for us, like for me at least, it's just like always like, building the ship sort of moment. But to your point in terms of like, hey, like, what are next steps from here? I think for us, like, it's all about moving up market. And so like we have a thing that's working really well sort of for like a long tail of people like who need to sign things and like invoice against things, but starting to move into sort of like the classical mid market, maybe even touching some of the like, enterprise light, applications. I think all of those things are going to become interesting for us very quickly here.
It's so interesting because I feel like, especially the market that you're disrupting feels like you all are the Warby Parker, the Harrys, right? It's the people who sort of sat, especially DocuSign, like sort of sat on the laurels of like, this is just how people do things, and then come in looking better, cleaner, faster, like, and don't have to have as much. I love the was it well, I've seen a couple of them now, but all of the tweets about the how many employees they have out there. Like, but it's back to and it's Elon, on X, right, of coming in and going, "Ah, we can do this, smaller, cheaper, faster, and we don't have to have, like it doesn't have to be buildings and buildings and buildings of worth of people to sort of do this." Do you feel like you're how are you gonna sort of stay centered in that in continually having that mindset of not sort of trying to push for the like, let's get a bunch of people in a lot of buildings to sort of push for the large company versus the like continuing to push into the new way of how things are going.
What I think's interesting is I'm going to use the words innovator's dilemma, and everyone listening is gonna be like, "Oh, I've heard of that." Some people will say they read the book, but they didn't read the book. It's a thick read, and it's a little boring, but it's valuable. It's just a hard read, um, but everyone's familiar with it, and everyone knows that it's an important book, and it's kind of the foundational principles. But if you read it, like you kind of wonder, like did the incumbents read it? Like, it's written for you. It's not written for founders. It's written for you not to die. And I'm just going through it with a greed. I'm just like, I just feel like no one at DocuSign actually read the book because they're falling into all the traps. And so
Right.
for us, because we don't look at it like a Warby Parker, we actually look at it like a Kodak moment, with their Kodak, where they everyone there, made money by selling film. Everyone at DocuSign makes money by seats per head signing documents. There's a day where, and it isn't the digital camera that killed Kodak, right? It's cheaper digital storage, right? Like the SD card is what is Kodak because that's why because of the SD card, I don't buy film and so for us, like our SD card is this moving of money, understanding that at the end of most signatures, money is moved. And so that SD card makes it like, why would you ever, we don't need to pay for e-signature anymore. And if you have a company who only makes money by selling e-signature, like the only way they would be able to compete is to cannibalize themselves. And big companies can't do that. And it's harder, faster for them to pivot just because they're so large. So they can't make these quick, rapid pivots that startups can. So this is just like the guerrilla marketing thing. Like I'm just kind of angry. Like I just want someone at DocuSign to read the book that we're all aware of and like realize that because I think a lot of people in the startup world talk about innovator's dilemma, but it wasn't written for startups. It was written for really big companies not to die by the hand of startups. I'm just like, read the book. If you
So
follow everything the
and then
books,
right?
yeah.
Adobe, and then Figma comes along and goes, "Hey, how about here's a quick, easy way to build all your things." And, and Adobe has built that sort of massive empire, and they're trying for seats in the same sort of way. Um,
And I'll give Adobe credit too, because again, it's fun to pick on folks that are over because I think Adobe was started in 1985. Like it is old, but they do some things, and they read the book. Now they're not competing against Figma as well because the XD was terrible, but when they went to cloud based pricing and they got off the annual like physical like software, they did Creative Cloud. That was a big like I think there was a fight. I think people quit over that decision, and it was the right decision. But for Adobe to do that, really impressed because they upset a lot of their customers. They pissed a lot of people off, people that because people don't like change. And so I like
right.
paying Adobe $1,000 every time there's an update. That's like what a dumb thing to say, but like that's the way the users were, and Adobe had to fight through that. Even with AI, Adobe's fast to adopt AI, and they got a lot of backlash right out of the gate. All the creatives were like, "You're stealing my work. You're putting it into your models," and they had to be like very careful about like, "Well, that's not accurate. That's not what we're doing." But like Adobe said, "Hey, we're going to go cloud-based pricing, and we're going to piss everyone off. We're going to adopt AI quickly. We're going to piss everyone off, and then we're going to walk them back and tell them like why this is better for you because." The way Creative Cloud sells today is better pricing and the AI tools. I mean, it used to be Will and I have known each other for 7 years now. Like it's changed a lot where I did all the design work and now Will's doing a majority of the design work because got all these AI tools. I mean, because I have a design background.
Right.
But like now, there's a lot of stuff where I can now move faster because I have Will's help on the design side. It was before all of the weight of that particular task always fell on me.
I don't know why I have this, like, flashback to, like, remember, like, CorelDRAW 10 where the books and you had, like, the 15 different, like, please insert disk 12 or whatever, you had to, like, update, and that whole thing cost, like, $1,000 to upgrade, like, to from one to the other. It's so amazing now to be able to go to Midjourney and be like, "I did a thing the other day." It was all about sort of having the single puzzle piece from Rick Rubin, and I go to Midjourney and I type in, "Oh, this is beautiful library with, like, puzzle pieces scattered everywhere." I'm like, "Man, that sounds great." But, like, it's just so amazing where the tools have come to. Where do you see in the future, do you see it one of those where you sort of, that you imagine between AI and also sort of atomizing away from websites and things like that, that being more sort of API driven, and potentially like away from the website or into mobile more, other things like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, big fans of Vercel and what they're doing with V0. So I think there's going to be a lot more sort of like natural language prompting of website creation. I think that just makes a ton of sense. I think like, yeah, I mean, if you look at like all of the like AI assisted like code editors, I think that just makes a ton of sense too. So I think it's like one of those things where building good product in 2024 or like being good at your job function, like whatever that is, if you're a designer, if you're an engineer, if you're sales, like doesn't matter what it is, like you got to have AI in there in some way because if you don't, somebody else does. And so for us, like we have like a whole set of AI features that we're actively building out. We have a whole set that we've already built that powers a lot of, what Agree is doing. And then like day to day, like whether it's engineering or design or, whatever it is, like using the latest and greatest AI tools, just make sure that we're firing on all cylinders, so to say.
Amazing. Well, I will leave you with this. I actually last Friday afternoon, we got a call for first check. Amazing to come from day of launch, a picture of a billboard on an iPhone, and now I'm gonna go use it for first check. So thank you guys for coming on, and also I love all the expertise in the background, and I love the design and product first focus. So anything that you would say, both of you, anything that you would leave for sort of people sort of on the fence or thinking about starting their first venture?
Oh, so I was just gonna say, don't think about it. Just go all in. And I think if you're scared to do that, we should be comfortable with the notion that entrepreneurship, startups isn't for everyone. And so no, if you got an immediate hesitation to even get started, maybe take a break, take a pause, come back to it later. When you've got because why are you scared? Where's the hesitation? So do you need a little bit more experience? Do you need to go work at a startup yourself? But I'm a usually just go blind, and Will and I say this to each other every single day, but it's the mantra is Go forward as though you're right, but prepare as though you're wrong. I think we think about that a lot. But Will, sorry, cut you off.
No, I was just gonna say congrats on like getting the commit, like huge deal, like excited for you. And then yeah, like 101 advice to founders, like don't waste money unnecessarily. So like, agree, like, don't pay for DocuSign is my one piece of advice for
That is our best. That is,
no.
heard it. That's the nugget. As soon as you start, you buy the domain name and then sign it for agree. How about those are the two things if you're going to start a company? Buy the domain name, so agree.
100%. And then like, yeah, to Marty's point, like action produces information. So just like start doing things.
Yeah. Amazing. Cool. Let's hang around for a second. I'll catch up with you guys after we wrap. But thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.